Integrity is telling myself the truth, and honesty is telling the truth to the other people. Good evening, viewers. I'm back with a new session at Dr. Kamini Rao's masterclass with a new guest this evening. I opened this episode with a very powerful quote by Swami Vivekananda. Whenever virtue subsides and wickedness prevails, I manifest myself to establish virtue, to destroy evil, to save the good. I come from yuga to yuga. If you are guided by the spirit of transparency, you are honest to yourself and society. It inspires you to operate with an essence of ethics. Today, we have a very special guest with us with the most significant human values. With this exalting trait, he started his journey as an advocate way back in 1984. From being the Advocate General for the state of Karnataka to the Judge of Supreme Court of India, and then retired as Lokayukta of Karnataka. This man made his mark in the field of justice to make the republic corruption free, or tried to, and make it a better place to exist. Let us welcome Justice N. Santosh Hegde to Kamini Rao's masterclass. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you, madam.
Sir, you have been one of the most well-known personalities in the field of justice, and you were very popular in showing us, not only telling us and preaching about justice, but you have also shown so many examples that justice can actually be practiced by showing the way to so many youngsters, that you have actually exemplified that if you really mind, you can wipe out corruption. But that must start from within you, rather than to say, why is he doing it, and therefore say something, do something else. So how did you actually, from your early days, get into this field of the judiciary, or was your early bearings into law, or was it into any other field?
I come from a middle class family. My father was a successful lawyer. He went on to become the judge of the Supreme Court.
Oh, wow.
In 1973, he resigned from there. Later, he contested election and became the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Yeah. Then when he retired from politics also, he left Bangalore and went to a small village where my mother was born, called Nitte, hardly about 5,000 population place, He settled down there till his last days, the thing. One thing he taught us was values in life, the do's and don'ts of life. And most importantly, he told us, be content with what you have. Don't aspire from somebody else's asset. And that, I think, has really carried me and my siblings, our brothers and sisters, a long, long way in our life. We have never aspired to take away from somebody else's property or cheat anybody. We are content and we are quite happy with what we have. In my profession, I learned it rather lately, after I became a Lokayukta, because I had an opportunity of interacting with the ordinary people who used to come to the Lokayukta institution seeking help in their everyday life. Lokayukta at that point of time had only two powers. One is grievance redressal. That is, people who suffer because of maladministration must get relief. That's the law. And they could approach the Lokayukta. And Lokayukta was not like a judge general that I won't see you, I won't meet you. And on the per contra, he invites people to come to him to give their grievances, and which gave me a tremendous opportunity of seeing what exactly is happening and why. Why is more important, I think, because I found out that it's purely because of selfishness and greed of people in power. The people and the ordinary people suffer in their everyday life. I can give you umpteen examples of such sufferings of the people. Let me start with one example. In about 2008, an elderly lady, maybe about 80, 85 years old, came to the Lokayukta institution with a physically challenged son who couldn't walk with his legs. He was crawling. I asked her, "Madam, what's your problem?" She said, "Sir, I have no income. This son of mine, he is not earning anything. I have one son working in Mumbai. He sends me 250 rupees through money order. And the postman wants 10% of it. If I don't agree to give 10%, he'll make a note. Addressee not found on 3 visits, and money is supposed to go back to the sender. Perpetually. I don't know really it goes back or not, So she cried and she expressed her grief and sorrow and her problems. So I believed her. Though, of course, the postman didn't come within the jurisdiction of the Lokayukta because he was a central government employee. I tried contacting a police officer who has the control or jurisdiction over the postman, but I couldn't succeed there. So I sent a policeman from my department, Lokayukta policeman, to that postman to tell him the consequences. He explained the policeman's own language, I'm sure, to him and all. It stopped. She came back to tell me, "Sir, he is giving me entire money without even causing any problem." Just imagine, doctor, what is the life of a person who gets 250 rupees a month from a son? It has to come through police, and out of that, 25 rupees has to go for it. I mean, this is what I saw. I could feel the sufferings of that lady.
Absolutely.
And also the happiness that I could help her. So these things, every time it happened, it encouraged me where I could help them out and all. And I tried to help them out without driving them to a court of law. I've seen what court of law and how much time it takes and all. Yeah, so this went on, and every day it was happening. In my working hours, half the time was reserved for meeting people. No interview is necessary to be fixed or anything. You come and you wait, you take your turn and come and meet me and tell me anything. And in the beginning, believe it or not, doctor, they wouldn't sit in front of me. You ask them to sit down. They said, "No, sir. Illa, sir. Better, sir." So I asked one of my friends, who was a doctor, psychiatric, "Why is this happening?" He said, "Look, Santosh, they are not used to sitting in front of a person who's suited, booted, tied it up and all, and a boss like you, and all. They will never sit there. They are not allowed to sit and all." So he said, "Remove that tie and jacket and other things. And just go with the open collar shirt, see the difference." And believe it or not, doctor, I saw the difference. And you invite them to sit down, they will sit down, and they would talk much more than they would normally talk. It's okay. I can have a lot of patience. I can tolerate that. But I learned so much during that period. If you see anything in me that's worth mentioning, it's all because of my tenure in the Karnataka Lokayukta.
But it's an interesting thing that you wear 2 hats. On the one side, you are a practicing advocate. So you are actually standing on the side, even protecting a criminal, for example. And on the other side, you get into Lokayukta, where you have to wear a very dispassionate hat, and then you have got to see what is right and wrong. How did you manage to change from that angle to this angle?
When I was practicing as a lawyer, even though I knew my client was a crook or a criminal or anything, my job, professional this thing was to help him to get out of that problem, irrespective of where the truth lied. When I became a judge, 2 lawyers argued their respective cases. I had to decide who's right. Again, both of them may be wrong, but I had to decide it within the framework of argument that was addressed before me. So there I was not feeling the vibe of the clients, unless it was a murder case where it was so grievous, this thing, and all, you have to give them a death sentence or to reduce a death sentence to life imprisonment. In such areas, a little bit of emotion was involved, but otherwise not. Whereas here, I met the person who actually suffered because of maladministration, and which I hated it because my parents inculcated that value in me and all. So, and when you listen to somebody about his own problem, and if you find it to be true, then if you are a human being, you understand. Now, 2 things that I tell students when I get an opportunity to meet them is, change this society, because the biggest culprit in this whole situation is the society in which we live. Today's society respects money and power only. How it came, nobody bothers. There's nothing wrong in becoming rich. I keep telling the students, once you get a degree, once you get a job, don't say, I'm finished, I'll become a sannyasi. No, you must have an ambition to grow, ambition to become somebody big. Ambition even to become rich, become a crorepati, but legitimately. Not by putting your hand into somebody's pocket. Not by stealing somebody's meal. Earn it yourself legitimately, any amount, enjoy it. If you are a little generous, think of humanism and this. So for that you require contentment in life. Okay, that's one of the things, what we call tripti in vernacular. The other value you must have is humanism. We are not, you are a doctor, we are not born human beings. There is no species called human beings. We are born to a species called Homo sapiens, which has nothing to do with humanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a scientific grouping. So humanism is something which you develop because of your experience in life. When you see somebody else's suffering, you think, I'm part of it. You want to contribute for his sufferings to be removed. That is humanism. And if you have these two values, I think we'll have a wonderful society. And it's my thinking that today this is totally lacking, because the society has accepted wealth in any form as a matter of success.
That's true. But again, I would like to ask you, sir, that there are so many things that nature teaches us in abundance. For example, if you look at the wild animals, and if they're going at the same, the two basic instincts in life are, of course, procreation and hunger. So if a wild animal, like say for example a tiger, is going hunting, they will not go and hunt 2 deer or 3 deer. They will hunt only 1 deer just to fill their tummy for that particular day, and they will not think that the next day and the third day and etc. They won't kill 3 deer, for example. So they are content for that particular day. So there is a difference between need and greed. So what is happening today is that we are now looking at the greed part, that society actually makes people, it's whether it is the press or it is the electronic media, or where they glorify crime, or where they glorify richness, or they glorify politicians who actually behave that money is might, and that is the way they can buy everything, and it's not a means to an end, but it is the end itself. So we keep on looking and making society believe that the greed is the only way that you can reach, and that is the thing, how quickly you make it is the best for you. So isn't society responsible for making the politicians the way they are? And we are responsible every 5 years for electing these corrupt politicians, and then we are the passive arbitrators of this kind of crime.
Absolutely right. You see, the main cause is the society. In the olden days, when somebody was corrupt or his character was not acceptable, then the rest of the society kept him away. There was no need to send him to jail or anything. The society itself, this was the concept for the people to appreciate what is good and what's not good. But greed is something entirely different, which is confined only to human race and not to the animal or any other race. Because we are intelligent. Animals think only in terms of now. What you want now, you go and get it. Only that much you want, you take it. We are intelligent. Oh, tomorrow I may not be able to work, so I'll store it for tomorrow. Tomorrow is not enough, I must store it for next month or next year. So it is, the greed has no limitation. If I may give you an example of growth of greed in this country, in the decade of 50s, there was one scam called Jeep scam. I'm importing Jeep vehicles for the Indian soldiers from Great Britain. Country lost 52 lakhs of rupees.
At that time it was quite a
huge amount of money. Huge amount of money. Savre idre avanu doda vyakti lakshadishanu bhara kammi iddadu. Anyway, that was the thing. Then every year or 6 months there was some scam or other was coming out. Mundra scam of LIC, Dalmia scam of Central Bank, Nagarwala scam of Bharat Bank, like that, various scams came out. And every time scam came into the public domain, the number of zeros in that figure started developing. That's the biggest development this country has ever seen, in the zero.
We actually invented the zero.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. That's how it went on. Then came the 80s, the Bofus, huge scam. One government, one political party lost the government. Okay, country lost 64 crores of rupees, not a huge amount at that time. Then came Commonwealth Games, 70,000 crores. 2G scam, 1,76,000 crores. Like that, every time the scam came out, and all the number of zeros went on multiplying, not by 1 0, 2 0, 5 0, 10 zeros like that. 1,86,000 crores of rupees have been siphoned off in one scam. I'm talking about 90s and 2000, not 2020 and all. Now compare this figure with the budget of state of Karnataka for that year. Was about 60 or 65,000 crores for 6.5 crores of people. Whereas one man in one scam siphoned off 1,76,000, 1,86,000 crores. Okay, so how can there be development? The consequence is referred to by a former Prime Minister of India, late Rajiv Gandhi, in 1985. When he was a Prime Minister, he publicly said, out of 1 rupee the government spends for any project or development, only 15 paise reaches out of that 1 rupee. 85 paise is siphoned off. Now, that was 85 or 95, whatever the year was. And all. Now you come to 2021. Greed has not come down, it's only gone up. According to me, my assessment, out of 10 rupees, 15 paise doesn't reach. What is development? Why is it happening? Now, you take a little bit, maybe people will ignore you and all. But nowadays, of course, everything is ignored because the man who goes to jail, he comes back, we go and receive him at the airport with garlands and apple garlands, that too, and all, and thousands of people receive him. What message are you sending to the rest of the society? He has not done anything wrong. When I have asked some people like that, why do you respect people like that who have gone to jail, I say, with swindled money? Oh, he's the only person who went to jail, is it? Didn't Mahatma Gandhi go to jail? We have lost that sense of assessing why Mahatma Gandhi went to jail and why this man went to jail. But that is prevailing. I can identify people who have been to jail who are in power today. Not only in one political party, in other political parties also. That means you want a leader who is experienced about the experience of going to jail. As per statistics, the conviction rate in this country is hardly 30%. That means 70% of the people who have been acquitted. And another major thing is, which takes away the fear factor from these people, is the law's delays. One case which has to be decided in the first court takes 15 to 20 years. I was reading in today's paper, in one case, Tata Institute shooting case and all, 2016 or something, a man is discharged today. That means even the trial has not taken place. Now, first court 15 to 20 years, second court another 15 to 20 years, High Court another 15 to 20 years, Supreme Court another 15 to 20 years. Everybody goes right up to Supreme Court. So how many years goes? There is a joke which I keep telling whenever it's saying, husband and wife, husband is 25 years old, wife is 20 years old. They get into some misunderstanding, they want a divorce, a separation, this thing. By the time they get the final decree, the man will be 85 years old, wife will be 80 years old. Is it justice?
Absolutely
And if
not.
you say, talk about, oh, justice delayed is justice denied. Then another man says, oh, justice hurried is justice buried. I mean, we have slogans for everything. What I'm trying to say is, all these institutions have contributed to today's social thinking.
I would like to tell you another example. For example, Kasam. Everything is caught on television. Okay, he actually shooting. And yet we fed him, fattened him, put him at public's money. How long did the court take to make a
very
decision?
Unfortunate, our jurisprudence is such, we copied British jurisprudence and all, where the prosecution has to prove that a man is guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Now, how to assess reasonable doubt is left to a man's own thinking. A man who is presiding over in the case and all as a judge. Now, his background or the growth and all might have come in from such a section of the society where he might think, oh, for necessity a man commits a murder, for hunger man steals, such like thinking is there. In the context of that, you will never know what is the way of it. Change the other way is also very wrong. That is, to ask the man to prove that he is innocent is also wrong. If we have a system by which we can balance both the things, which can be done by a judge and all, and you punish, because punishment is not only for the man who committed the crime, it's a message to the society also.
That is more important.
That is more important.
Yes.
And if it is quick and immediately, if a man is committed
the
a crime
effect will
today,
be there.
within 6 months, if he is sent to jail and made to suffer, then it sends a message even to that man, oh, I should not do it, I won't do it again. Similarly, a man who has not yet committed crime will also say, nah, bada pa yaake jail go, I don't want, and he'll keep away from it and all. Huh? But today it's not like that. What happens? I go there, I'll come back, I'll become a minister. As per statistics, 35% to 40% of the elected representatives in the parliament have criminal records.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
When I was young, such people had no place in the thing. Even on administration of the country, they had no place even in the society.
Absolutely.
But-
and it's the same with the Nirbhaya case as well.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah.
And yet, what we say is we have the judiciary, we have this. But what is the judiciary doing? And this is how, and if you're looking at the kind of unrest that we have, is because the youth don't have a direction.
Correct. That is where you should start first from the family.
Family.
Parents should inculcate these values, and they should be a model. You can't be a crook and ask your son to be honest.
This
and
is
all.
exactly
Okay,
what
you
has
should teach what it is. The second thing is, education also must have some subject on values. When we were young, I think we had a moral science subject.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Today there is no such thing at all. Today, education is improved in the sense it gives you tremendous knowledge, scientific knowledge, other knowledges, except moral values. There is no place for moral values. You think you become intelligent, that's enough. What type of intelligence are you acquiring? How to make money? And people use that intelligence for committing crime.
Going again, sir, when looking at your meteoric rise in your career, you actually wanted to be a doctor. All right. I mean, that's also a very noble profession, because I actually happen to be a doctor, and I find that, they always say doctors and lawyers are on the opposite side, and I really don't believe it. But at the same time, when you look at it, you went on to become a very successful lawyer, an advocate, etc. But then you got into a stage when you came into the Lokayukta, and you had a fantastic time in the Lokayukta, because you actually saw the suffering of people at very close quarters, and many of these instances really touched your heart. And the very people who actually got you into Lokayukta, you were able to name them in a lot of these scams, which many people would have been very scared to actually put, because they would have said, oh my God, they are the ones who actually gave me this post, and it's a very cushy post. And you could have actually sat back and said, okay, these people I will cover, and those people I'll expose, and you could have been one more of the same kind of people, so that they would have kept you pushing up, etc., given you more awards, etc. But no, you didn't do it. So you're a person who actually believes that, not because you wanted to become very popular, because during your tenure in the Lokayukta, every day the paper actually carried something or the other about you, and I used to be very avidly reading about it. And believe me, the politicians were running helter and skelter. Ayo, why did we ever give this man anything? I know he's coming behind us only. What was your experience when you were actually tackling the very people who created this institution of Lokayukta, because they'd given immense power to you? How did you feel on that?
Madam, I think I am grateful to my parents to inculcating these basic values, from which whatever I did today arose from that and all the same. Whenever I was given a job, I first tried to understand what is the responsibility that is entrusted on me, and never to fail in my effort to fulfill that responsibility. It could be a lawyer, it could be a law officer, it could be a judge, or it could be an ombudsman like Lokayukta or anything. I discharged my duties, which my conscience told me. I never sidestepped my conscience at all. I'm proud to say that, and I openly keep saying that. And people have admired me, people have hated me. So either way, I felt the vibe of the people in this thing and all that. But the fact is, I never cared for anybody.